Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and we've got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten. All right, this is going to be less of a newsworthy episode where we're talking about news and notes and stuff like that going on because we have a very special guest, Juck on Bucks, one of my favorite YouTube channels and podcasters that I like to listen to. Juck does a great job. He's an Ohio State fan, but he talks about all of college football, and one thing that I think he really specializes in and knows his stuff in just about better than anybody else that I listen to is recruiting. So in this show, we are going to talk about the state of the Big Ten and their recruiting, and we're going to have some interesting conversations. I think we're going to recap 2025. We're also going to get into the 2026 class and then talk about the big battle, which is the Big Ten and SEC, right? Is the Big Ten ever going to be able to catch the SEC in their recruiting battle? So without further ado, Juck, thank you so much for being here. And if anybody doesn't know, Juck, please tell them where they can find your stuff at.
Yes, you can find me at Juck on Bucks, and that's Juck with a J, like luck, Juck. And I don't know, maybe 5 times a week I do a little show where I talk about, mostly Ohio State, but really college football in general, maybe from an Ohio State slant, how it affects us, the Buckeye fan. But, JR, thanks for having me on. I really enjoy it. I'm already getting grief for the blue shirt. I just got out of the shower, Emily. JR's got me on here at 9. I'm a morning guy.
Listen, I wore a blue shirt, and it wasn't even like, solid blue. It was like really faded blue. I mean, it was kind of more silver than blue on the OHIO podcast one time, and I will never do it again. They let me have it. So
yeah, I deserve it.
We have a good amount of people here with us. Isaac was looking for you. He says, "Where's Juck?" No worries, we're here. Pit Snipe, he's jucking late. Love that. Thanks for being here, Pit Snipe. We appreciate you. John says, "Speaking of the SEC, how about Twitter today?" Yeah, there was some interesting stuff going on SEC Twitter today. It's probably not a trending topic we'll dive deep into, but you can search that up. It's a trending topic if you want to figure out what's going on.
I'm in the dark here. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, a student and her boyfriend and the dad, and yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff
Okay,
going
then.
on. You'll you might get a laugh or two if you figure it out. So, which it won't be hard to figure out. So, all right, Juck, what I want to do. So we have our little graphics here at the bottom, and this is the Big Ten recruiting football recruiting team rankings in the 2025 class. Number 1 in the Big Ten is Ohio State, but then next to it, I have in parentheses number 4 because that's where they were nationally. I know, of course, you know this, but to those who are listening or those who are watching, that's kind of what the graphic displays down below. Here for a good amount of time, I want to talk about 2025 first and kind of recap what happened in it. Most of the time, the big talking points are, the top teams in the Big Ten, but we're going to kind of dig deep into some of the other teams as well. Sorry, Purdue fans, we're not going to talk much Purdue unless Juck just has a deep dive takeaway he wants to throw out there. I'm going to anticipate he doesn't, but Juck, I'll just open it up. What were your takeaways for the Big Ten and the 2025 recruiting class?
Yeah. So I know that you're an Ohio State fan. You love the Big Ten. You're going to get the unbiased truth from me here because I am very resentful towards the Big Ten. I grew up as a guy who rooted for, all the other Big Ten teams. And then you had about a 20-year stretch where I feel like there were so many teams in the Big Ten who would not step up, would not commit to playing winning football on a big scale, wouldn't commit to recruiting the way you need to recruit. And I've got a lot of resentment towards a lot of them. Now, when we look at what's going on now, I think we are now seeing a lot of movement, a lot of investment, and it's the perfect time to do it. And I'm really happy about it. So as, looking through, knowing what we've known from the past, couple of decades about these guys, I got some pretty hard takes on quite a few of these teams. And I think quite a few of them are trending up. Not too many trending down. There's a couple I think are staying in the same spot, standing still. But, if we go over, I think you had a 4-pack you wanted me to hit on to start off the show. And that started with Nebraska. Mm-hmm. And Nebraska, can they, what was it? Do you think we can, what was the question you had there? Was it top 20?
Do you think they can break into the top 20? They were 22nd. Yeah, they were 22nd right. This year. How close are they to breaking into the top 20, you think?
Man, I think Nebraska is really conducting themselves like the blue blood that they are finally. And Matt Rule, who I got plenty of disagreements with him, about that. But
Right.
uh, as a Nebraska fan, my gosh, I mean, this is finally looking like a program that is operating like they are that program that we all know they are. And when we look at the recruiting haul they're bringing in and the swings they're taking, they're swinging even for bigger guys now. They're spending money. You've got the investment, you got the new facilities, like everything looks perfect for them. And I think they're an absolute cinch to be in the top 20 moving forward when RevShare gets cooking. Then there's Maryland, which, as we know, one of the most talent rich areas in the conference. They're usually able to keep some of that home. And all it takes is keeping a couple more of those big dogs home. We're already seeing it with Zion Ellie, the number one edge rusher. And now we're also seeing that commitment has got Emmanuel Ahianachu interested. It got his ears perked up about potentially staying home with Maryland. So Maryland with money to spend, if they have the drive, I think they can live in the top 20. And knowing that they've pursued Zion Ellie and Emmanuel Ahianachu, like it makes me feel like maybe they are now committed to really getting in there and digging deep. Washington, if we'd have talked about this 2 weeks ago, I'd have said they're a lock under Jed Fish to get there. That's until USC hired Chad Bowen from Notre Dame. And immediately we are finally seeing USC under Lincoln Riley commit to California in the West Coast, going from his first class when he first got there with 12 California kids, then 7, then just 5 kids out of 24 in his class from California last cycle. That was the most asinine thing I've ever seen. Now, in 2026, we're seeing a commitment to California kids. Unfortunately for Washington, I think that's going to affect them a little bit. But this is a program that had 3 years straight in the top 20 as recently as 2018, 2019, and 2020. They've got a national championship in my lifetime. They just went to another national championship. They're looking at their rival, who is reaching new heights, not just on the football field, but in recruiting. That's motivating. And I honestly think that we are going to see Washington get up into that top 20. The last one was Wisconsin that we were talking about right there. This is the most disappointing to me. After the 23rd ranked class in the country, Luke Fickell drops down to, I think it was 27. You probably got it down there. What was it? Yeah, 27.
Yeah, 27.
That's not good enough at Wisconsin, and we all know that. The schedule in 2025 leads me to believe that, the record's not going to be good. And I was kind of stunned that they extended him. Like, this isn't okay at Wisconsin. We're talking about the program that won the most games out of anybody that didn't make the playoffs during the 10-year stretch of the 14 playoff. It wasn't Penn State. It was Wisconsin. Often incorrectly attributed to Penn State as the holder of that stat. It wasn't. It was Wisconsin. I thought Luke would have them back. I thought they'd be cooking with gas by now. They lose 24 to the portal, bring in 18. I don't know what the level of commitment is at Wisconsin. If they get it, then I feel like they can get there. But I'm just unsure about that. Maybe somebody out there can fill me in a little more, but I just don't know what the level of commitment is there.
Yeah, Wisconsin's an interesting one because back in 2021, they had the 16th ranked recruiting class. And then from there, 2022 and 2023 were like near the 50th recruiting class. And so they kind of tapered off. And then Luke Fickell in 2024 gets them near top 20 again. And they actually regressed 4 spots. I don't remember if the points regressed or not, but at least the spots did, which it's not huge. But still, you're not improving your spots to get into the top 20. And when I was reading about the Luke Fickell extension, a lot of people were citing, well, he's recruiting really well and he's getting, a top 25 class. And I think it was top 25 if you looked at transfer portal too, maybe. But they were talking about it like that. And I was thinking to myself, like, kind of like you, where it's like, this isn't good enough for Wisconsin. Like, you don't extend a coach just because they had a top 30 class at Wisconsin. You extend them because they got a top 20 class and they won 8-9 games, right? At least to begin, because this is a program that is known to go to bowl games. And there for a while under Brett Bielema, they were going to Big Ten championship games and winning Big Ten championships as well. So as far as I'm concerned, like, I've been perplexed by the Luke Fickell stuff too. I know they kind of want to give him his time and let him come in and build the program up. And I think they're kind of resetting a little bit after Phil Longo just because of how terrible that went. But as far as I'm concerned, if Wisconsin goes 5-7 this year, I don't think recruiting classes are going to save him. I think that fans are going to be pretty upset, and the administration's, even if they still believe in him, they're going to have to figure out something to do because fans aren't going to accept it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just as someone, it's just a program that I've always, there was a long stretch there that, outside of Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, it was Wisconsin for me was the program I respected most in the conference. And it feels so far from that right now. It just feels so far from that. So a little bummed out by that.
Yeah. Pit Snipe Husker is asking, he says, what's up with UCLA? Are they even trying or just a smaller class? I'm not sure if you have any notes on them, Juck, but they did sign 19 players. They signed 2 4-stars in the 24/7 composite. Neither one of them was top 25 in the state, but neither of them were ranked nationally. It's one of those kind of weird 4-star situations there. An edge, Cole Cogshell, and then a running back, Carson Cox. Those were their 2 4-stars in the class. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this kind of where you're at a little bit with a first-year head coach, especially somebody who, I mean, it literally is his, not just his first year at UCLA, but his first year as a head coach in general. Would you expect maybe a lower class and maybe Deshaun Foster gets it going a little bit more as he kind of becomes a little bit more ingratiated as the head coach and learns that better?
In my notes, that's exactly what it says, JR. I did not expect anything else from UCLA other than what we've seen so far out of Deshaun. Like, this is exactly what I thought it would be. There's certainly nothing that's given me a lot of hope about it. Like, I don't think he's made any big impact on it. I don't think it's regressed much. This is right where I thought it would be.
Yeah. I agree. Let's see. They were talking about IU. Emily says, wow, John, IU, she's talking to one of the other people in the chat. IU is low. Would have thought they'd been higher. You have any thoughts on IU, Juck? I know we talked about it before, but what's your thoughts?
Well, at first glance, you look at that 47 and yeah, it looks like, wow, the way they just had that season, you'd have thought maybe towards the end, they'd have been able to do a little more flipping at least. But, they had a ton of momentum. There was a whole lot of disbelief for a lot of the season as to whether or not they would be able to actually finish off that season like that. And by the time they did, I think it's almost pretty late in the cycle, really, to get a ton of momentum going if it wasn't already there. This will be the year I think we can really judge about, how they're going to recruit going forward, because now they've got some equity in the bank. We're not seeing much of anything so far in the class of 2026 yet, but, we're not seeing a lot from a lot of people just yet. I'll be really interested in looking really hard at what they're able to do this year.
Yeah, I just hope Signetti doesn't get caught in the trap of, portal heavy too much, right? Because we saw Mike Norvell. Even somebody who can get your team to go undefeated in the regular season can get bit by a bad portal class. And that's kind of what you got with Florida State and Mike Norvell last year. You got guys that got punched in the mouth early. And as far as I could tell, I mean, I'm no insider, but from the outside looking in, it looked like guys that didn't care about Florida State, guys that just wanted the season to be over. That way they could go portal somewhere else. And I think that's kind of sad, but it's what happens in college football if you portal too much, in my opinion.
It is. It's a bad strategy to rely on, and that's my thing. You want to be able to go to the portal to fill your needs. You don't want to rely on the portal for your starting spots on your roster. It's just not a good strategy.
Yeah, I think 2026 will be a really telling time for Indiana. We'll talk about 2026 here in a second. Juck, any other classes in there you want to talk about? I do want to ask about concerning classes, but maybe any more just other classes you have thoughts on before we talk
just
about
one quick
concerning
thought.
classes.
Michigan State is a program that has the ability when they're cooking to get in that top 20. I would have hoped with the reputation Jonathan Smith has and just how it just feels to me like that program's coming together. And I would have thought we might have seen them close a little better. I was a little disappointed with them. That's my only other thought there.
Yeah, they went pretty portal heavy this last time too. I was wondering how much maybe they were diverting resources to try and, get better for next year so that way they could build some momentum off that for recruiting. We'll see what happens there, but that's another program. Seems like programs kind of go heavy in the portal to start. Maybe you don't have as great of a recruiting class, and then maybe the recruiting tries to pick up later on if they can do so. So we'll see. All right. So Juck, any concerning classes out there you're looking like, oh yeah, I don't really like where this was going for 2025. I have concerns for the future for them. What's your thoughts?
So the interesting thing about the Big Ten right now is as I'm going through, I just kind of try to do, all right, what's the trend line? How do I feel about this team, where they're going, what direction they're going? And there's really only one team that I think is looking down. There's some that are staying the same. There's a lot that are going up. But Purdue to me is the only team that's just, I can't see them coming out of this for a long time. Even when we look at Northwestern and we look at, I just don't think you're going to build that stadium unless you're planning on making something happen with that rev share. They got the facility. Now they got the stadium. Like, it feels to me like they're going to be trying to invest heavily and get better at football. So I think just about everybody is looking either here or up except for Purdue.
Yeah. It's interesting. Barry Odom, he's not much of a recruiter either. I remember, when he had his time at Missouri. Do you remember back then when he was there? I think, what was that, 9 years ago or something?
Yeah.
He was not much of a recruiter. He didn't delve much into that territory.
Yeah, no, I remember a couple of kids from Ohio going in there. I was just like, what are you doing, man? Like,
Yeah.
they were nothing at that point.
Yeah, but Eli Drinkowitz, he's turned it around. They're recruiting real well out there. So, all right, it's good thoughts there on 2025. So, what we're gonna do, we're gonna hit a commercial really fast, and then we're gonna come back. We're gonna talk about 2026, kind of the state of where everything is. Maybe try to predict a few teams and go from there. So, everybody, we'll be right back. Have you ever wanted to watch all 22 film, that film the coaches watch? Well, now you can. Introducing the Coaches Film Room. Over at Minutes to Sports, former college coach Zach Smith breaks down film of the most relevant teams in college football with a bit of a Big Ten lead. It's not free, so you'll need to sign up for the Colonel tier, which is $25 a month, but I can attest to you that it is far more worth it than that. With about 4 to 8 games per week, this is worth so much more money, not to mention Zach's analysis, making you a smarter football fan. Go check it out. The links are in the description, minutestosports.com. You won't be sorry. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, we do appreciate you being here. Please do like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Helps us out. If you like the content that we produce here, consider becoming a member. It really helps us out to provide you guys the best content we possibly can for your team in the Big Ten. All right, Juck, 2026. So we're really, really early. I have to clarify this every time we talk about it. We're really, really early. I always think of teams like Alabama, who are like outside the top 50 right now, but then always finish in like the top 5. And people who don't follow recruiting as much, which is fine, I get it. They're kind of like, oh my gosh, what's happening in Alabama? It's like, they're down low because that's just the way they start. They'll pick up momentum, but then you always have other teams that start really high. Notre Dame is one of them. I think the past 2 years they've been kind of hovering around first place, and then they don't completely fall off, but typically they're somewhere around 10th or maybe fall right outside of the top 10. It's just kind of the way things go. But I do think we have some interesting teams here at the top that have some staying power. USC, you talked about them, and they have some potential staying power with Chad Bowen and him coming in. Oregon is a team that seems to be near the top. They finished with the 5th class last year. They could be looking at a top 3 class this year as well. Penn State had a top 15 class. Are they going to break into the top 10? So, Juck, just overall, what's your thoughts on kind of the standings right now with the 2026 recruiting class and where everybody sits?
Not so much the standings, because I don't really pay a whole lot of attention to that myself at this particular junction, but more who they're talking to, who they're moving with, who they're going after, and what the reception is around the country from kids, just the feel of that program. And you can kind of feel it when you see this kid and then this kid and then this kid who might normally not have been interested in a particular school, i.e. Michigan, is all of a sudden now in scheduling official visits. But it's not just them. Like, as we enter this revenue share era with potentially these automatic qualifiers where you just got to be in the top 4 of the Big Ten, maybe even this proposal for, going down to the number 6 seed in the Big Ten might get a chance to play themselves in. Like, all of a sudden, if we're fans of these programs or boosters of these programs where making it to the playoffs was just not a realistic, attainable goal in the 4-team era, now all of a sudden, that million-mile away goal, like, it looks attainable under the right circumstances. A veteran, well-coached team that doesn't even recruit great can get an easy schedule, which can happen. As we've seen with these 18 team, 18 team leagues, like you can get an easier schedule, finish 6-3, and you can be one win away from the playoffs now. And I think what they're going to start doing is investing more. Like all of a sudden, it looks like we can have a shot here, and that's going to lead to some more investing. But as we go through every single team in the Big Ten right now, a lot of arrows pointing up. Like I said, Oregon, as high as they are right now, I think that they can and will get a recruiting crown here in the next couple of years. I think they won a number one class, and I think they'll continue to rise. Ohio State, one of the few teams that I see is just staying the same. They live in the top 5. I don't think they are going to pay the kind of money that you got to pay to kind of get higher than that, because they're just not going to compete at that level in recruiting. They've made that pretty clear. But I think they'll make sure they stay in the top 5. Nebraska, for sure, the arrow's up. Washington, Maryland. Here's another one, JR. Rutgers. Rutgers, with the money in the rev share and the talent around New Jersey, which is just at an all-time high, I think Rutgers can significantly raise here. Indiana, I think their arrow's up. Michigan State as well. Northwestern, like I said, that's 11 out of the 18 teams that I think have their arrow pointing up. The rest of them, I think we'll get to Illinois here. But the rest of them, I think are, they're either staying still or just Purdue kind of heading down.
Yeah, I was wondering if we talk much about Rutgers. Let's stay on them for a second before we get into Illinois really fast. I think it's really interesting what Greg Schiano is doing. I've listened to a number of their insiders talk about stuff and kind of the way they do their recruiting there and what they do. And correct me if I'm wrong if you know any of this, Juck, but they don't go after maybe the kids that have the best numbers and stuff like that at camps and things. Is they just try to go out and find guys that are football dudes, and maybe they don't have the best numbers because they kind of look at numbers and they're like, numbers be damned, like these aren't even the best sometimes. Like I hear people talk about all the time, 40 numbers are not even that reliable, so why are we looking at them? And so Rutgers isn't going to say, well, this kid can't come to our school because their 40 time wasn't under this mark, whereas a school like Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State is going to say, if you want to play here and you're at this position, you got to have at least a 40 of this time or lower. Right. But Rutgers doesn't really care so much about that. They just want to get dudes into their program that are solid dudes, good football players who, play good football, are technically sound, and are going to come in and be well coached. And I think that's working out for them. Obviously, 7th ranked class in 2026. Or in the Big Ten, 7th ranked, 26th in the nation. I don't think they'll stay in the top 20. However, they are kind of middle of the pack in the Big Ten, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them raise up to maybe a 30-ish, 35-ish class. What's some of your thoughts moving forward for Rutgers?
Yeah, moving forward, introducing the money and the local talent, I think it looks really good. But to your point about the way they go about things, I think it's really great to be self-aware, and they are. They know that they can't go take huge swings. It's a waste of time. So they invest that time in finding kids who love football and want to play college football. And then can they coach them? Do they have the prerequisite size? I think it's a very Iowa-esque strategy where Iowa just continually pops up football dudes that are great, and then NFL players. I think it's kind of like that. And I think it's a really good system for them. But I actually do think that we're going to start seeing them land some, like Maryland's doing with some of those big time homegrown Jersey kids heading into the next couple of years here when we introduce a little more money. I think we're going to see quite a few like, really, that kid went to Rutgers. Okay. That's what I foresee for them.
Yeah, that'd be crazy and really, really good for them and their program. And I can only imagine Greg Schiano getting his hands on, a top tier defensive lineman or something like that for him. He'd do some special things with him. So all right, let's get into Illinois. So, Juck, Illinois, they've averaged around the 50th ranked class most of the time. Back in 2021, I think they were around like 78th or 73rd. Then they've been top 50 since then, but They even reached top 40 in 2023, so that was really good for them. But this is a program that is, I mean, seventh in the nation right now. Obviously, I think most people know that's not going to stick. Like, they're not going to go out and get 2 or 3 5 stars that are going to be able to keep them there. I mean, they could, they might, we'll see. But I don't have that expectation for them, and I don't think Illinois fans should have the expectation they're going to go out and do that. Victor Singleton was a really nice ad for them if they can hold on to him. Top 50 recruit in the 24/7 composite, guy from Ohio that just they did a really, really good job of creating that relationship there and getting him to commit. What's kind of your thoughts overall, Illinois? Do you think that they can stay in the top 20? Like, do you think that's good expectations for their fan base? What's your thoughts here?
My thoughts are, when we see commitment like we're seeing from Illinois, which we've seen it in the transfer portal now for a couple years, we've seen winning football now. We're seeing how much they, I don't want to say paid to keep their guys from going to the NFL, but that's the game now. They kept their guys from leaving. They got a bunch of seniors. What is it? The top number 3 in returning production in the country. So they invested really hard in that. They're investing in the portal. They're investing on the recruiting trail. Vic Singleton is a huge recruit. Most people are under the impression that he won't end up signing there. I disagree. I think he will. They also got Cam Thomas. So a couple of 4-stars leading that class from Ohio, making inroads into Ohio. If you're a Big Ten team is always a good thing, and becoming one of those destinations. Like, we saw D'Antonio do this for how long, bro? Like that number 2 team in the Big Ten who can get those second tier Ohio kids that Ohio State doesn't want. That's a good spot to be. And D'Antonio made a living off of it at Michigan State. I think we're seeing a little bit of that strategy going on with Bielema, and he's doing good in the portal. They got the newer facilities. I think it's like 5 years ago they got those new facilities cooking. The energy that they've got going on with Bielema around the program, the excitement, the expanded playoff. When you see all that, that leads people to come off money, and that is what it's all about here. Like, the more you can get people excited, the more you can get investment in your program, the better they're going to do. And I think that they've got everything set up here to potentially crack into the top 25 from a program that lives in the 50s, which would be enormous.
Yeah, for sure. I really like the comparison of that Mark D'Antonio there. We were talking about this on another show. Actually, it was when we were talking about Victor Singleton, and I said, like, Victor Singleton is not the guy you so much expected to get, but by getting inroads in Ohio, it's
Right.
a recruit that you had the opportunity to go in there and get. And as long as Ohio State's going to continue to recruit nationally, which there's no stopping there, as long as Michigan's, going to try to recruit more nationally, Notre Dame, like, you're going to have the opportunity to go out there and get some of these, second tier players, like you said, that maybe Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame aren't as interested in, right?
Yes, I do want to be clear here. I don't want anybody to think I'm some bitter Ohio State fan. I don't mean Vic Singleton was the second tier guy. I mean, getting to the inroads. They beat Ohio State for Vic Singleton. Very much wanted him. So I mean, well, Cam Thomas, for instance, there you go. Right. And he's a 4-star. Ohio State didn't offer him. Linebacker, really, really good. But that caliber of guy, a 4-star that Ohio State doesn't get, being able to snatch that guy up, that's a great pickup.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a terrible thing to call somebody a second tier kid. It just means that you might not have, the numbers that another kid has in Ohio, but like you said, Michigan State made a living on developing those kids, bringing them in. They had attitude, they had gusto, and they were able to come in there with, with some confidence and say, look, Ohio State didn't want me. Well, guess what? I'm going to go give Ohio State the best game ever. And 2015, when they think they're going to win a national championship, we're actually going to take them down, right? I mean, it still hurts, but I mean, we got to acknowledge it, and it is what it is. So yeah. I think Illinois is in a really, really good trajectory here. I have been kind of singing the praises of Brett Bielema now for about a year or two. And that what was it, 5-7 season a couple years ago kind of concerned me, but you looked at the way the season played out, some of the injuries you had, and you thought, okay, well, this is a program in Illinois that Brett Bielema hasn't really built up yet to have the kind of second tier depth to be able to sustain some of those injuries. Maybe at some point he will. I mean, when the guy got Wisconsin cooking, they were able, they were able to battle with their first strings and some of their second strings as well. So if he's able to build that up with Illinois again, really get those guys in there, do some incredible things, and like I said, get some guys like a Vic Singleton that maybe you aren't supposed to get, but you're able to go in there and get. What's your thoughts on Brett Bielema? Just really fast, Juck. I'm curious your thoughts on him overall as a coach. Am I crazy to think that he's one of the more underrated coaches in the country? I've been called crazy. I'm kind of a Big Ten homer. I know that, but I think we got to give these guys some of their credit sometime, right?
I think Brett Bielema is fantastic. And when we look back, even you brought up Wisconsin, but even his Arkansas teams were always tough as nails. Like they were a tough out for anybody. And I think he is, obviously at this point in his career, he's been around so long, just a steady Eddie, a consummate winner. Dude knows how to run a program. And now we've seen that he's able to evolve. He's staying with the times here as a guy who's getting a little bit older. Like they're in great hands, man. I think very highly of him as a coach. I think he's a bit of a jerk sometimes.
I was gonna say he's kind of Lane Kiffin-esque on X, isn't he? Emily's pointing out his X is epic, yeah. And as he's so affectionately known around here, Bert is what everybody calls him. I love that. I just love that they call him Bert. It's so funny. All right, so I'll end this with you. I'm going to put you on the hot spot here, Juck, and no pressure if you don't get it right, because at the end of the day, I don't think I'd be able to get it right by predicting it either. But top 20 class for Illinois, yay or nay? What say you?
I'm going to go with no. Outside the top 20, inside the top 25. I'm going to call it between 20 and 25.
Yeah, I think that's a good expectation. If they can get another, maybe surprise commit or something like that, maybe they get in there. But yeah, I think that's probably the safer bet. Is probably top 25, maybe not top 20 yet. So interesting stuff. All right, now Juck, this is where you grade me. Okay, all right. I made a bold prediction. I don't know, maybe what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago? I did a bold prediction show, and I put a lot of bold predictions out there, and sometimes I get ridiculed for my bold predictions, and people say, oh, they're not bold enough. And I'm like, well, I also don't want to look like an idiot, So I'm trying to say something that's realistic. Well, I got pretty bold with one where I said that the Big Ten would sign 5 top 10 classes in the 2026 class. And I know that's crazy, but they did have 5 in the top 15 this past season, right? And I got to be honest, I'm really buying USC recruiting right now with the hiring of Chad Bowen, them getting into California more. I mean, you talked about that. I feel good about where this program is. And then if Penn State can have a very successful season this year, maybe they ride some of that momentum in the 2026 class to get into the top 10, maybe a 10th, 9th class up there. And maybe we find ourselves, maybe nobody in the Big Ten's in the top 3, but maybe we find 5 Big Ten teams either top 10 or maybe somebody is just on the outside looking in 11th or 12th. So you tell me, is it possible? Are you kind of like, no, I can see that happening? Or are you just going to say like, JR, you're absolutely crazy. That was way too bold.
Well, I think we're definitely going to see Ohio State. Oregon, of course, we're going to see. That's 2. We're clearly seeing early in 2026 that Michigan really has this money. That's very clear now. It wasn't just for Bryce Underwood, a one-shot deal. It's been injected into the program. They're going after the top dogs. They're going to try to flip the number 1 wide receiver right now. Like they're in it to win it. They're definitely going to be in there as well. That's 3. USC, what they have going on now, and keep in mind, Lincoln's first class at USC was a top 10 class. Then he went to 15, then 17. So it's not like it's foreign territory for him out there. I think it's a 100% lock that those 4 are in the top 10. Like I'm totally with you there. Then we go to Penn State. Can they do it? Well, we know they're capable of it. They have done it before under Franklin, but this is a program that lives at number 15. I mean, in the last 6 recruiting cycles, they have been exactly number 15 3 times, number 14 once. They got 2 outliers. Once they were 21st, once they were 6th. Can they do a 6th again? I'm going to say no, but I don't think you're crazy. I think it all hinges on that. Outside of that, I don't think we're going to see anybody else pressing that top 10. But man, it would be really cool. It would be really cool.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that my hopes for my bold prediction hinge on Penn State here. We'll see how that goes. But no, Penn State fans, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I've been labeled a Penn State hater on this show before, and I don't really know where it comes from. Like I sang James Franklin's praises when he went to the Final Four in the playoffs and told people he deserves credit for beating Boise State and stuff like that. Even when they told me I was crazy then too. So sometimes I'm just crazy. It is what it is. Juck, any other teams in 2026 that you think maybe could reach that top 20, top 15? Any teams that maybe could surprise some people? We talked about Nebraska, Maryland, stuff like that in the 2025 class, but anybody you're looking out for in the 2026 class that like keep an eye on this team. They might get up there a little bit more.
I'm kind of nervous about it, but I think there's a chance Michigan might have a top 3 class, and that would be monumental. I just what they got going right now, the caliber of recruits they're in on right now, the interest that we're seeing from some of the top guys at various positions they don't even usually recruit well, is something we haven't seen in a very, very long time. Uh, it's a little different, got a different feel. And it wouldn't shock me one bit if they had a top 3 class, which would be amazing. But that's one of the things I'm unfortunately looking at, thinking that might be a realistic possibility this cycle. And man, I'm telling you what, if Loxley can get Ahianachu at Maryland, they might be able to push into the top 15. Like they might be cooking. They might be seriously cooking. There is so much talent around Maryland. If they can make it cool and if they can pay some money, like it's going to look really, really different in Maryland in a couple years.
It's crazy you say that because Zach and I were just talking on a previous episode about how Maryland is able to get this talent. They just are never actually able to turn it into anything on the field. I mean, I don't know if you looked at the NFL Combine invitations this year, but Maryland was one of the highest ones in the Big Ten. They had 5 invites for them, and not a lot of people would expect that when you had more Combine invites than you had wins this past year, right?
Yeah.
And I say that, Ohio State had 15 combine invites and they only had 14 wins. I get it. Okay. I get it. Somebody pointed that out to me in the comments afterward. And I was like, all right, I guess I
You
can't use
got
that
me.
joke as much. Yeah. Um, but as far as I'm concerned, like this is one of those teams that Loxley, because of the area, I think he spent some time in Alabama. He got some of his recruiting
Mhm.
chops from there as well. Like he's able to bring in talent, but that talent either just A doesn't develop or B leaves for Penn State, and you're never really able to see it materialize at Maryland. Do you have faith that if they do get Zion Ely and Emmanuel Iheanacho that they'll stick around, they'll develop? I mean, are you thinking this is just maybe just a NIL, well, I guess not NIL, rev share thing where they're going to get a bunch of money? I mean, just maybe expand a little bit more on Maryland there, and then
I
and then we'll
think
take a
there's a
break.
certain I think there's a certain caliber of dude that you get a couple of those type of dudes, and I think both Ely and Ahianacho are those type of dudes where a couple of pieces around them, that makes you 1 or 2 games better right off the rip. I don't know, man. I don't know what it is with him. He is consistently underachieving. Those teams, I always feel like they should be better than they are. So I totally get where you're coming from. I would have cut bait from him a while ago. The problem is, like he's like an unk, man. Like the young bros love him. You know what I mean? Like that dude is like everybody gravitates towards him. You don't want to cut bait with a guy like that. You want to give him everything he can to succeed. But man, he has got to put forth something on the field here soon.
And I'll make this last point about Maryland, and then we'll move on. I have heard that before about just how much the players do love Mike Loxley. And I've always wondered, is that because Mike Loxley runs a really tough program where guys are coming in and they're being challenged every day? Or is that because Maryland runs a program where maybe it's a little bit, country clubbish, where it's like, yeah, come in and, catch some balls. We'll have a good practice, chill out on the sideline, like, is that one of the reasons why they love Mike Loxley? And I'm not trying to disrespect the guy, obviously, like he has had some success at Maryland. I think he's won 8 games a couple of times. Maybe, I don't think he had a 9-win season. Did he? He might have went 9-4 one time.
I
Anyway,
can't
um,
recall.
yeah, I can't. He did pretty well there in the 2022 2023. But anyway, that's kind of my thing with like if they love Mike Locksley so much and the guys gravitate toward him, what's it like in practice? Because some of these guys, they really, really like a guy. And sometimes it's because they're really, really hard on him and they really push him. And then other times it's like, well, they just run a really nice program where we can kind of chill and have a good time and rest on our athleticism. And
And maybe get an
I don't know.
NFL combine invite. No, I'm with you. I think it's a fair question. Totally. I don't have a lot of insight into the program, but I think it's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah, but they're definitely getting talent. You're right. They can get talent. They're in a talent rich area, and Mike Locksley knows how to bring them in. So eventually they should put it all together. We'll see. But all right, everybody, another commercial break, and then we're gonna get into the big topic, the big discussion. Big Ten, SEC. Don't know how long it'll take. Could take 5 minutes. Could take 15 minutes. Could take 50 minutes. Okay, it's not gonna take 50 minutes. But Juck, I know Juck's got to get to bed tonight. Okay, I don't want to keep him up too long. We will be right back after this message. Home Field is your go-to destination for premium collegiate apparel with a passion for comfort and a flair for vintage design. Home Field brings you gear that is comfortable and stylish. With over 150 colleges to choose from, Home Field digs deep into the archives, uncovering forgotten logos, iconic mascots, and legendary moments to create one-of-a-kind apparel. Use my code TBTH for 15% off for new customers, or use my link in the description. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, have my nice graphic down here where I have the average team recruiting rank of the Big Ten and the SEC since 2021. So if you can't see how small that little piece is down there, in 2021, the Big Ten had an average rank of 35.1. The SEC had 23.4. In 2022, the Big Ten 30.5, the SEC 17.1. 2023, Big Ten had 38.9, their worst, and then the SEC had 19.4. 2024, Big Ten 35.3, SEC 16.6, and then finally this past year, the Big Ten had an average of 34.4. The SEC had 16.9. Now, I will say some of those are a little skewed because you have things were going well for the Big Ten, and then you had Purdue, put up a 98th class, which I told people that's like 7th best in the MAC, which is what I literally told people last year. Purdue would not have finished as a top half team in the MAC last year. That's how sad it was of a year for Purdue overall. The way they were performing, the way their numbers were and everything, they weren't. Anyway, I'll get off my Purdue rant. I want you to be good, Purdue. Please stop being terrible. So Juck, I want to have a conversation here about the Big Ten and the SEC. Obviously, we know the SEC is king in recruiting. I will argue other stuff with the Big Ten and the SEC because I think there's fair talking points. Maybe the Big Ten doesn't win out, but I think it's at least closer than other people think. It's not close in the Big Ten and the SEC when it comes to recruiting. I don't think the goal for the Big Ten should be to surpass the SEC. I think the goal of the Big Ten should just be to kind of, be more even, right? Maybe you're not averaging top 20 classes, but average top 30, average top 25 every now and then. Bring that a little bit closer so that way you're not hovering around 30 every single year. That's obviously more difficult with 18 teams rather than the 16 teams that they have, but I mean that's not why this is happening. It's because the SEC is consistently getting 4 or 5 teams in the top 10 and consistently getting 6 or 7, sometimes 8 teams in the top 15. Juck, what's your thoughts here? Can the Big Ten, do you ever foresee a time the Big Ten will be near close with the SEC? And if that happens, how do you think that would happen?
Well, when we look at the SEC and we look at the Big Ten, I have a metric that I use in recruiting, and it's are you a do whatever it takes program? Are you a program like we've seen at USC, who, things look bad, everybody's burying USC, and boom, here they come, they're right back at it. Things look like they're falling apart. They lost their whole class last year. All the Georgia kids go. What do we see now? Boom, they're right back at it. Are you a do whatever it takes program? USC is, Ohio State is, Oregon is, Michigan is. Is Penn State? I don't know. But when we go to the SEC, do whatever it takes programs. I've got Georgia, Bama, Texas, LSU that all live in the top 10. I've got Florida, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Auburn, Tennessee now back. All teams who've had multiple top 10 classes in the last 10 years. Those are all do whatever it takes programs. We got 50% of that if we count Penn State as one. And that's the difference. My goal, just being a fan of a Big Ten school and generally, reluctantly, a fan of the Big Ten teams. I want them to be better. Like, I want to be more proud of the conference as a whole. I think that we are seeing, and with this expanded playoff and the fact that it is right there in front of them, I think that we're going to start seeing a couple of these guys maybe not pop in to do whatever it takes kind of program stratosphere, but man, let's really put some emphasis on football. Let's put some more emphasis on recruiting. Let's put some more finances behind our coach and see if he can do what it takes. I do think that the more we see of that, the more we'll see, like, these numbers, JR, that's embarrassing, man. 38.9 to 19.4. I think we're going to see that shrink. I really do. But when I look at the data from, let's say, go back to 2015 and 2016, top 10 classes and top 25 classes, the SEC was averaging at that point 6 top 10 classes, and the Big Ten about 2.5 top 10. Top 25, the SEC 13, the Big Ten 6. That's 10 years ago. Now we take it to the present day. The SEC in 2025, 7 top 10, Big Ten 3. Top 25, they had 12 and 7. Like, those numbers, they're the same. We got to get them on these margins here, though, when it comes to shrinking these. And this is where I think we'll make a big difference here. Obviously, we're never going to have as many do whatever the hell it takes to win programs in the Big Ten. It's just not the culture at too many of these schools in the Big Ten. But can we close that? I think we can definitely close that.
Yeah, I think the gap can certainly be closed. I do think, the Big Ten, and this is not an excuse because I agree with you, there needs to be more do whatever it take programs, as you said. And there need to be more that don't just look at who can we get that are underrated, but actually go down south and get our guys who are going to be impact players for our program. But I do think, recruiting rankings down in the South are higher than recruiting rankings up in the North. How much do you attribute that to, the nicer weather down south? Guys are playing 7-on-7 across the board. Ohio is actually getting more 7-on-7 year round right now, which I think is going to be helpful for them. But I mean, how much do you attribute to the down south, they're just able to play the game more often. They're able to develop more in high school and get better at those type of things. And the disadvantage that the Big Ten has, again, not trying to use it as an excuse, just looking at it, as a disadvantage the Big Ten has, to where teams like Iowa or Minnesota, they're not getting to go see guys year round as much as maybe they would with, an Auburn or, I don't know, name your other, Arkansas. And I'm not trying to say Auburn or Arkansas are the same. I know Auburn fans would take offense to that, but just trying to say teams down south that maybe are not in that top 20 range every single year, but are still doing a good job of recruiting. What's your thoughts there?
It's a real thing. It's definitely a real thing. I mean, we look at a lot of these places in the Big Ten, and we're talking, it just seems to me that so many places in the South are, students are specializing in high school in football year round. They're doing, football activities year round. We don't see that anywhere near as much in the North. And to your point, like, we look at a guy, when we talk about just recruiting rankings in general, and I don't care what you tell me, if Justin Hill, who was the top 50 recruit in the country last year out of Cincinnati, grew up in Macon, Georgia, I think he's a top 10 recruit in the country. Like, that is real. That's 100% real. So when we talk about ratings, they're skewed a lot in that direction as well.
Yeah, and I think that kind of plays into it a little bit with the Big Ten, but like I said, it's not an excuse for the 38
right.
to 19. That's embarrassing. If you want to consider this a power two, I mean, everybody knows how important recruiting is in college football. You can supplement with the transfer portal, and you can even get a good season out of the transfer portal. But I would say we're actually seeing less talent in the transfer portal now than we have in years past, because it seems like teams are catching on that you need to hold on to your guys better, and they're diverting resources to that much better than maybe they were in the past. So, Juck, I guess my other thought here with the Big Ten and the SEC and everything going on there is, are we going to see any more do whatever it takes programs in the Big Ten? Could Nebraska get to that level? Could Luke Fickell bring Wisconsin to that level? Could we see a Jed Fish, who I mean, he's coached all around. He's seen do whatever it take programs where he's been. He's seen the NFL. Like, could we see some more programs get into that upper echelon of we're going to do whatever it takes to bring the best possible players into our program because we want to win?
I think without a doubt, Nebraska is in a different category than anybody else we might mention here. I think they're damn close. I think they're damn close to going all the way in. Like this, you know, they're going to get a taste, I think, in the next couple of years of some serious success. And they're going to say, we're never going back. We're never going back. We're going to do whatever the hell it takes. And I think the next on my list that might make it into that category, if they get pissed off enough, they got the money, they look down on their rival, they see the rival with all the success is Washington. I believe in Jed Fish. For one, I think he's a really, really good coach. And I think that he does a pretty damn good job recruiting now. But I think that the investment, we might start to see that come in a little bit more serious fashion at Washington. And I just can't imagine the way they've been to Oregon fans throughout my younger years. Like, they're like, they look down on them like Michigan looks down on Ohio State. You know what I mean? Like they're the upper class institution. It's got that same kind of feel. And I can't imagine this is sitting well with them. Like at this point, now that Oregon is not just, so much more successful in the last 15 years on the football field, but now that they're actually a legit annual top 5 recruiter, like there's got to be something in there that's going to make them, trigger this. In the rev share, like I think after we're a year or two into this, it's going to be super revealing to us. Right now we're trying to predict it, but I cannot wait to see what really happens with a couple of these programs we're talking about. If none of them do step up to that plate and really start getting to that category or close to it of the do whatever it takes, I'm going to be so disappointed, man. I really am, because this is a time right now where all of Northern football can really seize the moment. And I think we're seeing it from quite a few places, but so many more could jump in.
Yeah, and we've talked about programs before that we feel like could do more. I mean, we did an entire video one time. It was probably a 10-minute video, me and Zach, and we just railed on Minnesota the entire
Yeah.
time. And
Oh, they drive
like,
me nuts.
yeah, and I kind of like Minnesota a little bit. I like their spunky attitude. Like I've not really liked PJ Fleck for most of his career, but something about last season kind of won me over a little bit with him. I don't know what it was exactly, but I think it was the antidote of confidence that he said his team took, which was just Sprite. I don't know if you heard that story. That was
Yeah.
an interesting one, but I see PJ Fleck not have the money to be able to hire his assistants, but he's continually bringing guys in, and they're going to the NFL, or they're going and they're getting hired away by Miami. And it's like the dude knows how to get good assistants. The dude knows how to get good coordinators. Maybe they're only going 7-5, but when you're a team in Minnesota that you're in the recruiting rankings around 50th, to go 7-5, win your bowl game every year, which I know bowl games don't mean as much as they used to, but still, like, that means you have good talent in the back end because they have opt-outs just like every other team. They have guys who transfer just like every other team. I mean, to be able to do that, I do feel like there's potential there at Minnesota, but the lack of investment by the program, they're more willing to look at hockey and say, well, we want to be good in hockey. And it's like, all right, there's 12 people that watch hockey. Sure, good for them. But, we're here in the Big Ten, and you got the big dogs actually trying to make this conference something, and you're over here paying your paying your assistants, little to nothing.
You know what else, JR? I'm so interested to see what happens at Iowa when Kirk leaves. Like we know Kirk's going to do things his way. Nothing's going to change no matter what's going on. But when he leaves, what do we see at Iowa? Because I think that the people of Iowa, I think they definitely want to be an all-in program. Like they love the Hawkeyes. And I think that program could potentially really kind of change their fortune. And maybe we see something, but it's not going to happen with Kirk there. I just don't see it happening with him.
And they hang their hat on that development too, talking about a guy like Cooper DeJean and how he was able to, really shine on special teams and on defense. Boy, I would have liked to see him play wide receiver for Iowa. I think that would have fixed, a number of issues, but they don't use their wide receivers enough. So we wouldn't have heard his name enough if that happened. But yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to be really interesting what hire they make. They
Mhm.
typically will go with a guy who's on staff. I mean, the past two times they go with a guy who's on staff a little bit younger, not super young, but a little bit younger that turns out to be the coach there for the next 30 years. Phil Parker, he's getting a little bit too far along, I think, to try and be the head coach there. What's he in his mid 60s now, early 60s, something like that. And that's not too old to be a head coach, but if you're Iowa, you're looking for somebody that can be there for a while. I'm wondering if they go with a Tim Lester. I'm wondering if maybe that offense keeps doing well. And I mean, Iowa, they haven't had an offense the past few years, but I mean, they put up 50 points, a few games, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so this is a team that has shown they're able to invest in the offense. And if Iowa does that, I agree. I think it could be special to see something going on there. All right, couple comments really quick, Juck, and then we'll get out of here. Emily's talking about the SEC. She said, but we still beat them. And so she says, are we doing more with less? Now, I have a theory, Juck, and you tell me if my theory is correct or not. You tell me if I'm a homer or not. I might be. It's okay. I just think the Big Ten has better coaches than the SEC.
I agree.
Okay, good.
I do.
I think they do a better job of developing their players. I think they do a better job of getting creative and going to different parts of the country and not just staying in their little bubble of the Midwest or out west or up in the or the DMV or whatever, but actually going out and bringing those guys in, creating a culture, creating development. I personally think that's why we've seen the Big Ten be better in recent years. Do you attribute it mostly to that or anything else, Chuck?
I attribute a huge amount of it to that. And, when we talk about talent leveling out, people talk about the transfer portal. Like if you look at the transfer portal rankings, they look the same as the recruiting rankings. Like the Big Ten is not, like all of a sudden there's 10 Big Ten teams and 10 SEC teams in the transfer portal rankings. Like that's not what it is. It's just being able to go out and get those 7 or 8 pieces that complete the holes in your team that you couldn't have done before. And that combined with the coaching, which they've always been doing more with less or trying to be creative or trying to hustle for the next thing and not relying on the crutch of we'll just get the next mid 4-star guy to come fix the problem, or 5-star guy if we're talking super elite. And it's hunger creates ingenuity, and lack of resources. And I think that we're definitely looking at a pile of coaches right now in the Big Ten that are really, really good.
Yeah, I looked at a coaches rankings of the SEC the other day, and when I looked at, I think they had one of them had Lane Kiffin at number 2, which I didn't agree with, but I thought to myself, if you have Lane Kiffin as your second best coach in the conference, which I know he's not, he's probably more like 4th or 5th, maybe 6th. You got Sark there. You got there's other guys that are better than him. But if you truly think Lane Kiffin is your second best coach in your conference, I'm sorry, but your conference has terrible coaches. Like Lane Kiffin cannot be the second best coach in your conference to build off of. It can't happen. You got Kirby Smart, and he's great. I think sometimes he gets a little bit too much credit for some things, but at the end of the day, he went back to back. He's a great coach, done a great job. But yeah, I think that's my main point there. It's just if Lane Kiffin's your second best coach, it's not good.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
All right, Juck, I know you got a lot of notes. Is there anything we missed overall, not Big Ten SEC specific? Is there anything else that you maybe learned a little bit more about or dove a little bit more deeper in that we missed? I just kind of want to open the floor to make sure you get all your information out there because I know you worked hard on notes for this, and I do appreciate it.
Yeah, the last I had was just about the transfer portal. So when we look at those recruiting rankings and JR puts those numbers up there, like it's essentially the same. I was hoping that I could find a trend line in there where we would see the Big Ten is making gains on the back end in the portal, but they're not. So, there's nothing we can say there. Like that's where we're getting the gain. It's just about plugging those holes. And I think that there's a lot of Big Ten teams done a really good job doing it, upgrading at certain positions here and there. And it's really leveled the playing field in that way. That combined with the better coaching in some areas here or there, has really made things a lot different when we see these two play each other. And I think for the next 5 years, future of the sport, we're only going to continue to see the Big Ten gain more traction. And that's pretty exciting because for 20 years there, it led to me having a very complicated relationship with the rest of the Big Ten.
I get it, Jack. And I was telling people about this on one of our, actually, it was on our call-in show the other day. One of the reasons why I started, this channel with the Big Ten, full disclosure, I hated the Big Ten for a while too, like you did. I thought Ohio State's running things here, and nobody else is stepping up and doing anything. And then Ohio State didn't win the Big Ten for what, 3 4 years straight. And then I got really upset, and I was like, this sucks. We're not winning the Big Ten. And then I was like, well, the Big Ten is elevating. It's getting better. And then I thought to myself, well, if the Big Ten's getting better, maybe there needs to be more media coverage. Maybe there needs to be more people talking about them. You can find an SEC podcast left and right for what they got going on down there, but you don't find very many Big Ten podcasts. So I launched this one, which just so happened to be the same time as Doug Maurice's, his Kings of the North podcast, and that one's done a little bit better.
Oh,
than
that's no. You're way better, Jr. Now Doug is great to listen to, but the premise of that show is shit. I'm sorry, dude. When you are including Colorado and BYU in with I've got nothing in common with them. That's at the North. What are you talking about? Boston College, like these Northeast teams in with no, dude. That's not. This is the Big Ten. This is Northern football. Get out of here with that crap, man.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm not able to listen as much. I do like Doug a lot, so I do try to tune in every now and then. Doug's great. And I like Bill too, and they're very entertaining when they dress up in their costumes and stuff. But yeah, it's a hard listen when they get onto Iowa State or
come on,
or Utah or something. I'm like, I gotta be honest, I just don't care.
Let's unite with our brothers from Colorado, our northern brothers from Colorado and BYU and Massachusetts. No, thank you.
Oh man. All right. Juck, I've taken up enough of your time. We've had an hour now. I really appreciate you coming on. Really appreciate you sharing your expertise on recruiting. It's one of the things I've always loved about your show is how much you talk about recruiting, just how much stuff you know. And you just do a great job. Not just Ohio State, but just recruiting all over the place and all that you do there. So again, one more time, tell people where they can find your show.
Yes, Juck on Bucks. Stop in any day. I'm usually there 5 times a week, maybe 7, depending on how much there is to talk about. Not a ton lately, but we're popping in every day anyways. JR, appreciate you having me on. Emily, Dave, thanks for popping in. Everybody who popped in to say hello, appreciate you guys so much.
All right, very good, very good. And you had a college football channel too, right? Juck on college football.
Yeah, Juck on CFB is where I talk about kind of the national football college scene, stuff that's not so Buckeye centric, but not on there as much. Mostly Juck on Bucks.
There we go. All right. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Thanks for being here. We will have a Big Ten After Dark episode for basketball either tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. If I can get somebody for tomorrow, I will. You can check out my work over at Scarlet in Game at Fansided. I write over there for them. And then you can also find me on Locked On Illini every Monday morning with that, and find me on ESPN Radio out in Iowa. If you so choose to stream it from wherever you are. No, you probably aren't living out in Iowa, all of you, but if you want to hear me do a 10-minute segment, you can listen to it. It's normally around 5 o'clock on Mondays, I think it is. But just appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate y'all watching and listening. Have a good one.